Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head back to my motherland of Scotland once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel many times before. Now, these days, this brewery is a very well established and very well respected name within the Scottish craft beer scene, and they are most definitely best known for their different kinds of sour beers and doing lots of really experimental stuff within that category. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is from a newer series of beers that they've been doing over the last wee while, and they're based on different items of confectionery, if we can put it like that. I think I've had maybe one or two beers from this series before, or ones that were made before this series became a thing, and these kinds of beers that they do are always really quite interesting, and I've heard very good things about this one. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to my motherland of Scotland, like I said. We are going to go to the city of Edinburgh, the capital city, and we're going to have a look then at another beer from the wonderful Vault City Brewing. So this particular beer comes from their Sweet Shop Sour series, comes in at 6.5% ABV, and this one is called Violets. So yeah, from what I understand, this beer is based on the Parma Violet Sweet, which comes from a company in Derbyshire in England called Swizzle's Matlow. I looked this up, and in turn that sweet was named after a flower variety, but I'm not sure if we actually had a different brand of those kind of sweets in Scotland. My gran and grandpa used to give me them when I was a wee boy, and I don't remember them being called Parma Violets. I remember them, yeah, just being called Violets. So maybe somebody else in Scotland was producing these sweets. If you happen to know that, let me know in the comments section below. I would be very curious to hear about that. But yeah, this beer, I had to try it when I saw it, you know, based on one of the candies that sweets that my gran and grandpa used to give me when I was a wee boy. So we had to do a review of this one, and I love reviewing my Scottish beers as well, especially since I've been here in Hong Kong. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. A 6.2% candy, question mark, sour from the wonderful Vault City Brewing in Edinburgh. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a wee bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Vault City before, and we will be adding more to that list in the very near future. Of course, I think I've got another 2 beers to review from these guys and another collaboration beyond that, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Scottish playlist along with a number of other things. That's constantly being added to, or whenever I get the opportunity, I should say, these days, because not too many Scottish beers make it to Hong Kong. But do check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about the foundation of Vault City Brewing. So Vault City Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Edinburgh, and the company was founded back in 2018 by Johnny Horn, Adele Wilkie and Stephen Smith Hay. So Johnny worked at the Hanging Bat Bar on Lothian Road in the city, and Stephen and Adele were regular customers, and over time they just became friends. So Johnny was studying archaeology at the time, if I remember correctly, and he's actually from Wales originally, but he was also a keen home brewer, as was Stephen, and the two started brewing together and then planning their own brewery, and Adele apparently contributed a lot of the ideas when she joined them early on. And Johnny was a great fan of the Belgian lambics and sour beers, and this really started to rub off on Adele and Stephen, and they all felt that there was a bit of a gap in the market in the Scottish beer scene for a sour beer brewery, so they decided that this was the route they were going to take. So initially they didn't think so much about making money, and they set up what they called a glorified home brewing kit as their main brewery in Stephen and Adele's kitchen, and they began brewing weekly back in July of 2018. But over the next year, they began to visit a few different beer festivals and began kind of getting their name out there and spreading the word about their beers. And after this, they started brewing their beers at 71 Brewing up in Dundee, and they spent a total of 16 months there before relocating to their purpose-built facility in Portobello, which is just out to the east of Edinburgh. But during their time in Dundee, Johnny decided to leave the company and found his own brewery called Holy Goat. From what I understand, it was quite amicable. I think, you know, Stephen and Adele wanted to have a kind of base beer that they played around with, whereas Johnny wanted to be more experimental and try lots of different styles. So it was kind of just a creative difference. But now we have two very good sour beer craft breweries in Scotland, so it's nothing to complain about. But these days, Vault City have their wee Vault bar, which is right next to Haymarket Station in Edinburgh. I do recommend you go and check it out. And they opened up another tap room in Portobello called Portivault, but this closed in late 2024. In early 2025, though, they announced that the brewery would move to a new site at Midlothian Science Park, and this would allow them to eventually produce 10 million litres of beer per year. And they're currently in the crowdfunding stage for this venture, but they do expect it to open in late 2025. So hopefully they get a little brewery tap room there, and I can go and check that out at some point. I would certainly love to interview the guys from Vault City. You know, Stephen and Adele would be very interesting to talk to, I'm sure. But as of May 2025, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced over 370 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd, and you know, like I said to you, the vast majority of these are sour beers, wild ales, whatever you want to call them. But the name Vault City as well is taken from the Edinburgh/Southside vaults, which were built in the arches of the Southside Bridge in Edinburgh, and these were home to different kind of workshops and taverns and things like this. So they really wanted an Edinburgh name for these beers when they were starting out. But yeah, I think that is everything I can really tell you about Vault City Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's that. Let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So this one, as you can see, is another 440 milliliter can. As I said, it's from their Sweet Shop sour series that they do. It's simply called Violets, 6.5% EBV, and yeah, you can see, you know, if you know the shape of a red blood cell, actually, the Parma Violet was this kind of shape. It was almost like a little kind of pill, if you like. But yeah, 6.5% sour, this one. It doesn't say too much about it, but you know, does it say what fruits and things? Honeyberry, teaberry. Ah, I see. This is kind of interesting. So teaberry is a very interesting Scottish native berry. I did a teaberry sour review from these guys a couple of years ago, and that was awesome. So yeah, honeyberry and teaberries in this one apparently. But yeah, 6.5% sweet sour. This one, I guess we can say. Let's get it out into the glass and see what it's all about. Big shout out as well, of course, to the guys at Craftissimo in Shunwan here in Hong Kong, who have been importing a number of the Vault City beers over the last couple of years when I've been here in Hong Kong. It's always nice to have a taste of home, if you like. So I think that'll do for the moment, so we can have a little look at the beer. But yeah, we've got what, about maybe 75% of the beer out in the glass, something like that, 3/4. But yeah, anyway, there we go. So before the head disappears on this one, you can see that it's poured with about a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would actually say perfect white head. I'm surprised that it's perfect white, because you know, you can see the colour of this beer. So yeah, you can see some medium-sized bubbles sitting on the surface of the beer there, but the head certainly gets a little bit more foamy the further up that you go. And colour-wise, this one, it's actually like, it's kind of like a very deep amber. It's almost the same kind of amber hue as like a West Coast double IPA or something like this. I didn't quite expect that level of colour from it. But remember, when it comes to the colour of your beer, it's dependent on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well.
But yeah, it can, you know, those are the things that are really going to affect your sour beers. And when it comes to this one, I'm guessing it's, I actually don't know what colour a honeyberry is, but a teaberry is quite a kind of deep red berry from what I understand. Well, maybe brighter red, it can be deep or kind of fairly bright red. So quite a lot of the colour in this one will be coming from the teaberries in there. As I say, I really can't remember what a honeyberry looks like. I've not seen one in ages. Not something you're going to see in Asia, to be honest with you, I think. But yeah, colour-wise, this one, when you consider that there's teaberries in there, I'm not overly surprised at this. You can see it's got a bit of like a naturally hazy sort of thing to it. And that'll be due to the presence of the wheat and the oats and stuff that are in this. Does it say? Actually just says malted barley in this one, which is kind of interesting. It doesn't say anything about wheat or oats. But yeah, not much in the way of visible carbonation. One or two bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the surface of the liquid there, and then yeah, it's got a nice little bit of it's got a nice little bit of a kind of foamy ring around the edge of this one now that the head has just kind of faded away. So yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that this one isn't more kind of violet-y in colour, in honesty. But yeah, it certainly looks pretty nice, and it's not too, you know, it looks pretty similar to other beers we've had from Vault City in the past. Let me just put the last wee bit of this in and we'll see if the colour changes any. Ah, see, it actually gets a little bit darker there, and there's a few wee bits of sediment in there. It's all natural, of course, though. But yeah, it looks pretty good. Does it say when this one was canned? 31st. I think this one was canned on the. This was canned at the end of January 2025, because it says it's best before the 31st of January 2026, and Vault City usually put a year on their beers. But yeah, you can see it did get a little bit darker there as we poured everything else in. But yeah, let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then and see what we get. So say, just very curious about this, and the Vault City beers are always very kind of quirky. But I will tell you straight away, it does smell just exactly like Parma violets or whatever you call them. That's the first thing that jumps out of this beer at you. It really is a bit of a nostalgia trip, this beer. Oh man, throwing me back to seeing my gran and grandpa after school every day. Yeah, used to go in and visit them every day after, well, on the way home from school. My mum would come and pick me up after her work later and then take us home. It was always quite nice. Yeah, aroma-wise, this is aroma-wise, this is really, really nice. As I say, a big nostalgia trip for me. So I need to try and describe this in a way that people who don't know this sweet, you know, it actually makes sense to you. So let's try that. As I've often said, you know, these kind of sour beers, if you like, they're often very straightforward in terms of their aromas and things like that. But you know, if they're done right, they're just really nice beers to drink. And Vault City do quite a lot of beers that are very much like that, I would say. So yeah, the backbone of this beer, of course, you've got a little bit of like white bready bread crust, wee bit of woody character, wee bit of crackery character as well. A good little bit of fluffy white bread in there. You can smell a wee bit of an oaty creaminess. There's some white bread in there as well. And then on top of that, though, you get, of course, all this, you know, the sort of candy, sugary. Sherbet's not the right word, but if you think of like maybe a black currant, or if you think of, yeah, like a black currant, like a mix of black currant, strawberry, maybe a bit of raspberry, kind of like aroma, flavour, sherbet, whatever, that's what this beer really kind of reminds me of, in a sense. So yeah, the way that it all pieces together in this one, I think, is very, very nice. So yeah, there's a little bit of like Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy type aroma in there. There's definitely a wee bit of sweetness to it, and I do get little hints of like vanilla and stuff like that as well. But it's a very kind of bready. Yeah, it's a very kind of like bready and candied backbone that this beer has. As I say, you've got lovely little bits of yeah, just brown, like there's a little bit of that Werther's original butter candy sort of thing coming out of it as well, which is interesting. So yeah, the middle of your nose in this one's just a very, very sweet beer, this, for sure. So in terms of the the yeasty side of things, there's not too much else to report there. The yeasty side of the beer at the back of the nose, it's got, as I say, it's got a little bit of white bread to it, a little bit of kind of brown bready character, and then a little bit of yeastiness too. But yeah, you've got a wee touch of the brown bread at the core, the white bready notes in there, and that wee bit of kind of white bready character. And yeah, that is really quite, yeah, that is really quite nice in this one. So yeah, the malty yeasty side of this beer is nice. It does say on the can here that they're using hops in this beer, which I'm curious about, because you know, when it comes to a sour beer brewery, if you like, it's always interesting to ask them about their hopping mentality. When it comes to the likes of the Flanders Reds and the Lambics and stuff like this, what the Belgian brewers would do is they would add older hops into these beers that had lost a little bit of their alpha acid potency, and so the bitterness, you get the complexity of flavour, but the bitterness from the hops wouldn't kind of compete with the sourness of the beer. These days, when you've got a lot of you know, modern sour beer breweries, if you like, and Vault City are most definitely one of those, some brewers will argue that adding the hops into the beer gives you that little bit more depth of flavour, whereas other brewers will say, well, the fruit adjuncts that you put into the beer and all the other stuff is going to suppress the green component anyway, so why bother? So, you know, both arguments are valid in my opinion. It really just depends what you want to do. But Vault City and also, yeah, Holy Goat, seems that Scottish breweries do like sticking to that, you know, putting the hops in the beer. So this beer, you can smell, it does have a degree of green component to it. And it's like a kind of German noble sort of quality. There's a wee bit of that smooth earthiness, there's a little bit of woodiness to it, but yeah, floral aromaticity, and a wee bit of grassiness as well. So yeah, the way that this goes together in that sense as well, the green component in this one is pretty nice. So on the fruity side of things, I think we've kind of gone through that a wee bit. For me, like, I get a lot of, you know, blackcurrant out of this. Like candied strawberries in there. Yeah, so blackcurrant, candied strawberry. Yeah, blackcurrant, candied strawberry, a little bit of, how would you say? Yeah, blackcurrant, candied strawberry, wee bit of like maybe I think there's a wee touch of like raspberry to this one, and of course it's tayberry. We know it's tayberry and honeyberry in this one, but those are, unless you're Scottish, it's a bit, I think it's a bit difficult to know the tayberry flavour in particular. I can't even remember what the honeyberry tastes like, to be honest. But yeah, there's a wee bit of like blueberry and stuff like that in this one too. Just a whole mix of berries in this beer, I would say. So the fruity side of this one is really nice, and of course it has that kind of sherbety, candy sort of sugar. It's almost like Skittles. I think if you think about the sort of aromas and flavours you get from maybe the red, the purple Skittle together, I think that's probably a good descriptor of what's going on with this one. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, but I think it is about time that we try this one now and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is simply called Violets, based on the Parma Violet Sweet, a 6.5% candy, sweet, sour, whatever we're going to call it, from the wonderful Vault City Brewing. Currently in Portobello, but soon to be based in Midlothian, near Edinburgh in Scotland. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. That's good. Yeah, that is a very, very nice sour beer, this one. You know, I think, yeah, probably Vault City really have their own kind of style, if you like. I think it's fair to say that. So I don't know. I don't know if it's really feasible to. I don't know if it's really feasible to describe this brewery as being, to describe this beer as a candy sour or exactly what, or a sweet sour. But I think it's whatever it is. I think it is very, very nice. I would say that. Yeah, but flavour-wise, it is very, very nice, this one. I think it's a big thumbs up from me for sure. It's not really. This is yeah more. It is more of a kind of sweet candy sour. This one. It's not going to blow the head off you in terms of its sharpness or anything like that. But it is just really nice. And in terms of the likeness to the violet sweet, yeah, this is pretty good. Yeah. So let's just break the flavour of this down a wee bit then and describe it for you more in depth. Middle third of your palate then. The backbone of the beer, of course. You've got a little bit of that kind of fresh, white bready, bread crusty character in there. As you move further forward, you get that little typical bit of woodiness, and there's a wee bit of a kind of crackery note sitting on top of that as well. Yeah. So yeah, on top of that, you've definitely got a little bit more. There's quite like a dense. There's really a little touch of like a wholemeal brown bready character. There's just a little bit of graininess in the base, but above that, you've got this really dense, very smooth. Yeah, you've got this really dense, very smooth, white bready note coming out of this one. And then above that, you can feel the more dense wheaty character in there, and I think there is a little bit of oat in this beer as well. Particularly if you go down the middle line of your palate, you can feel that little bit of creamy oaty character in there. So yeah, brown bread, white bread, the wholemeal brown bread, the white bread, the more dense wheaty character, then that big oaty, creamy sort of note in there. So yeah, the way that goes together is quite nice. Within the oaty and the wheaty layer, you do get a little bit of this. I often talk about yogurty character in these kind of sour beers, and further forward within those more dense bready layers, you get a little bit of vanilla coming out of this one, and it does give you a very slight yogurty kind of character as well. So yeah, in the dead centre of your palate though as well, I would say, you get that little circle there where you've got the kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy note coming out of the beer, and yeah, I do like how that pieces together in this one. That's very, very nice. Yeah, the way that goes together is nice, and I do like the wee bit of sweetness that it gives you, but kind of into the aftertaste you get that kind of sort of it's almost like Skittle sherbet. I think that's the best way to describe the kind of candy flavour of this beer. So you can feel that Skittle flavoured sherbet vibe type thing in the middle of your palate with this beer, and that really is what the Parma Violets were all about. So I think we've described the middle third of the palate quite nicely in this one, and I would say that's where the vast majority of the complexity in this beer is. But let's go to the back third of your palate then. As I've often said, the back third of your palate, you've got a really nice mix of things going on, and especially a bit of character from the yeasty character, but generally speaking, between the middle and the back third of your palate, you get very similar flavours, but they just come out at different intensities, if you like. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there. There's a wee bit of brown bread in the base, the kind of white bread in the middle, and then the more dense wheaty character on top of that. But yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, the base of the back third of your palate in this one, and you get the drier side of the bread crusty character, the crackers there. The brown bready layer feels a little bit lighter, taller, and more airy. The white bready layer above that still feels quite dense, but it does feel that little bit more lighter, airy, and slightly drier. Then you can feel the more dense wheaty character on top of that. The wheat in this one incidentally doesn't have so much of the bite that the wheat can have, and then the nice kind of smooth oaty character above that is also very nice. And then yeah, you get the oaty characters just pushing their way out of the beer as well. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together in this one, I think, is really interesting. Yeah. So the yeasty side of this beer, for me, at its core, it feels like more like a kind of wet, like white bready character, and then it's almost surrounded by this like really this really sweet Skittle kind of sweet sugar sort of thing. That's really what I'm getting from the yeasty side of this beer, and that lingers into the aftertaste. It's very, very sweet and straight sugary at the back of that, at the very back of the palate there. But definitely, yeah, back third of your palate you can feel the flavours taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way all of that pieces together, I think, is quite nice in this beer for sure. Let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. So yeah, the hoppy side of the beer for me, it's yeah, I would say it's quite the hoppy side of this beer for me, there's not too much of a green component to this one, and obviously this beer's it's a couple of months old at the point we're drinking it, about 4 months old or so. So I feel a bit of the hoppy character will have dropped out of it in a sense. But yeah, in the back corners of the palate you do get a little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward it's a little touch woody, and as you push further forward from that to reach the kind of front corners of your palate, it's got a little bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity to it, I would say. So yeah, the floral aromaticity that comes out of this one is quite nice, and you've got that nice kind of grassy note coming out of the beer too, which around the front curve of your tongue, which I really like. So let's focus on the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there, the brown bread and the kind of white bread, and then the more dense wheaty character on top of that. Base of the front third of your palate, yeah, you've got the bread crust, the Jacob's cream cracker, brown bread, white bread, wheaty character, and then yeah, a little bit of the oat, and then above that you've got that nice yeah, you've got that nice just oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. But I would say that in that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that nice I keep saying the word nice, you get that lovely sort of Skittlesy type flavour pushing its way out of the beer, which I do quite enjoy. Yeah, it's good stuff. So let's focus on that oily fruity bubble. I think from what I was, from what I said about the aroma, the fruits that were coming out of the aroma are pretty much what you're getting in the flavour here. So yeah, for me, it's a kind of big mix of like candied raspberry, strawberry, blackcurrant, and a wee bit of blueberry. Like you're getting all of that on that front third of your palate there, and yes, I think that's a good way to describe it. And honestly, this beer doesn't have so much of like a sour impact. So yeah, it really doesn't have a kind of sour impact in this one. So yeah, the way that it all pieces together in that regard is quite interesting. But yeah, it really is very much like candy in the sense. I think that the malty side of this beer is a bit more like, it has a little bit more of that kind of, it's got a very slight smoothie sour element to it, but yeah, the actual fruity side of this one is very much like candy sour in a sense. And that's a style, a sub-style that I haven't encountered all that much, if you like. But yeah, it really does show the flavours of the Parma violets very, very nicely, this one. So yeah, it's for me, this is a sort of sharing beer. I would happily drink, half a can of this and try it, but to drink a full can myself, I think is a little bit difficult. It's just a little bit too sweet in that sense for me. But yeah, but I know that if I go to Vault City's bar, I'm going to order like half pints rather than full pints and stuff like this. But yeah, I do like what they've done with this one, and it is an enjoyable beer, especially for the summer. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the flavour. Let's just round off with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So mouthfeel wise for me, it's kind of bottom end of mid-bodied. Carbonation is very smooth in this. It has got a degree of, you know, you can feel the nice clean Scottish water in this. We're very proud of our tap water, as you might have gathered, and as I've stated in numerous reviews on the channel. But yeah, it's got a lovely cleanliness to it, the mouthfeel. The back, you know, the malt base, a bit drier underneath, smoother in the middle, and quite sweet and candied on top. And then yeah, you've got a lovely, juicy, fruity character to it as well. So yeah, the way that everything kind of pieces together in this one, I think, is very, very nice. So gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, the fruity side of this one, yeah, it's yeah, just very, very candied. So again, this is kind of typical of Vault City. They're very well known for these very sweet sour beers. So all in all, I've enjoyed this one. A real nostalgia trip for me, but to drink a full can of this myself is a wee bit of a task, if you like. But you know, in fairness, but I know with Vault City, their beers are always very sweet and very kind of candied and things like that. So for me, the Vault City beers, I love trying the different stuff they do, but normally I would share these with somebody, then that's just me. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Violets, a 6.5%. I think we have to say candy sour for this one from the wonderful Vault City Brewing in Edinburgh. It really shows the flavours of the sweet quite well, and for me, it's been awesome to try this one, having, you know, considering that I used to get these sweets all the time from my grandparents who have long since passed. But yeah, so I think we can leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Vault City Brewing as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the fairly near future. But until the next time, slàinte, skål, cheers. Check out my social media, check out Vault City's social media, and do check out my other videos as well. Until then, slàinte, skål, cheers. See you guys very, very soon. Ciao just now.